Welcome back. This should be a short one. Of course, you've already seen by looking at it how many minutes it is, I'm sure. But this is a question that came to me by email. And because the person was sending along a video for me to watch, in which there was a discussion about line, shape, that sort of thing, and the idea of what the role of design is with it. So here's the question in my words. When you talk about design, do you mean designing as in finding and improving a line or a shape? It sounds like you mean more than that. And so, and this gentleman didn't give me permission to use his name yet, so I may still put it in here, but anyway, all right, so I'm calling him anonymous. Anyway, so let's just look at a few things. This is a very simple question because I've showed it to you before, and I know at the very least I've talked to you about the what Gammell was talking about when we're working on the sleeves of a blouse. And it's very easy to take for granted that all it means is make some pretty lines there or whatever. It doesn't mean a lot more than that. Well, in one sense, it means everything more than that. But let's see what it means. And it comes to you that it's going to be a relational game. I mean, it should be clear pretty soon that it's going to be a relational problem. Ang was the guy that Gammell referred to when he said when he suggested who we look at for ideas about designing drapery. Now, drapery design is has this dual role. And again, this is the conversation that came out of the Gammell studio. Its one role is to define the figure, and its second role is actually to be decorative in its own right. So the expression that was used was "you reveal with what you conceal," and some of you know exactly what that means. And all right, so let's just look at this drapery in this Ang because of that. This is the portrait of Hassenville, I believe. And what you're going to see here is all sorts of opportunities to do what we're talking about, to do drapery. So to design drapery. So why would Ang send me? I mean, why would Gammell send me over to talk to Ang about drapery, right? Now, it's easy to take for granted that this is just the way it looked. And this is one of those places where those guys involved in landscape painting want me to tell them what should they change in the landscape. Well, this is in the category of what you want to be talking about. It's funny because we don't really necessarily have a view to changing anything, but there's a limited amount of drapery you can set up, much like a landscape, and have it fulfill all the purposes of the design in a given area. Fundamentally, you'll find the design of the drapery, of those folds and things. You'll find the designs in what's given. You'll find that you'll get that drapery to define the form, and you'll have set up something. You'll watch the folds, looking for them to begin to do something beautiful. And you can, of course, beat drapery to death, especially if you have it on a mannequin and over control this thing, or you can simply get the larger portion of it looking good and working well, and then as you go through, you'll see a need to move a fold over, for example, to get a better rhythm between spots. And let me give you an idea what that means. And then you'll actually grab some other portion, perhaps, of the drapery, or reset some portion, having established certain other parts. And this is very what shall we say? This is very unimpressionistic in the sense of that sense of putting things down just as they are and just searching out the beauty of them. But even an impressionist would do this if he understands that design matters in drapery. So my answer to the question, by the way, to put it simply, is that no, a design is not a line and it's not a shape. It's the set of them working together. Naturally, it would be that, right? Design's bigger than an object, right? It's bigger than a line. It's the set of them working together. Now, there'll be very beautiful lines, some of which will look well seen and be nicely made and all that sort of thing. But But let's just take this portrait, this painting here. Something like this section here, say, maybe was looking pretty good. And he said, I'll just do that. And as you go along, you'll find some anomalies. You'll find that some portion of the, let's just say we're talking about having set this up with spots. Here are these series of spots. Here they are. See those? I'm counting these as the leading folds. And of course, that's the most important thing you can do, is deal with the strongest ones and the ones that come to the eye first, and design with those. So here you can see this line is beautifully describing the hip, so to speak. And then you'll see there's a timing between the next one and the next one. Then there's a great leap over here, and this is a different size and a different location from all these things. And then there's this one. And what you'll do if you want to see if somebody's designing is, or if they're good designers, you just look at groups like that and ask yourself how beautifully placed they are in relation to each other. Not that you can tell them that there's a rule, you must do this and you must do that. The rule, most fundamentally, by the way, is variety with unity, much like the rule of all composition. So when you put this in here, there's a line, there's a dramatic line going this way, but there's a certain amount, I'm just talking about traveling across here, but there's a certain amount of up and down, right? Up, down, up, and you might say down. And if you look bigger, if there's more to it, there may be another piece way out here, you'd be on top of all that. You'd be aware of their curves. You'd be aware of these going this way and getting straighter and then curving out this way and curving this way. Those are the things you're trying to control and get to look beautiful. I hope that's kind of clear. I mean, in terms of folds, you're also doing form. And there's form content, form discussion between folds. And of course, the folds have to, there's a truth in the folds. They have to be convincing. But that's in the category of the stuff we talk about. So design is the entire group of things taken together, okay? It's not one shape or one line or any of those things. This isn't a design here. In the old sense of the word design, which means also just drawing, that would be design. But we're talking about something considerably bigger than that. And the same thing as that would be apply in an area like this. So it would apply to the fingers, by the way, how much this one is curled versus that one and this one, and how much of one shows, and the gap, the shadow gap between the two. That's called design. You're designing the fingers at that point, but what you're really designing is, of course, the blobs. And so, yeah, that would be true no matter what passage you're designing, and not just typical drapery. Okay, so I'll just look at a couple more with you. The glove here maybe is a nice example, walking away from the fingers idea. But you notice how in typical design you're looking for variety. So each of these fingers is different. This mass right here is bigger than this one. They do something slightly different, and yet they look good as a set, right? That's in the family of what design does, okay? There's bigger stuff, in the world of composition, the way Gammell would discuss it, but like how big this is in relation to all the other lights, for example, if that's considered a separating light. And by the way, whenever you have curves, they all relate to. There's a relationship to all curves, right? That you're trying to be aware of. If this plays any kind of a role with other curves, say like this one, you'd be aware of that in your looking at the model, and play those kinds of games as well. That would be the way you're talking about this thing to this thing way back here. But this is more in the order of big design, not even composition really. That's bigger design. So again, you can see these folds, these lights, say these highlights. They're each doing a different thing, but they play a nice, pleasant game together as they truck their way across here and end out in these points. The same thing would be true of, say, this mass here. You notice how he's made this unit, different in size from this unit, even though they're similar. And then this is the bigger, the mama bear, the baby bear. That sort of thing keeps happening as you're traveling your way across. So again, this is in the order of design. How big an individual one of these lights is in relation to the next one, what the shape is in relation to the other ones in the neighborhood, and so on. So, and again, you'll see this look for variety in terms of between fingers things, in terms of the gesture of the darks and that sort of thing, one to the other. But that should be all you really need to get your head around. It's really about finding some way how they hang together, all these things. And especially things that look like, again, I'm going to put that category. Here's a flat one that goes to this one and to this one. So you could see that these three ought to feel good together. You could even think of this as four fingers and be looking for the same kind of variety in the way they play, both their angles and their distances from each other and their sizes. So that's in the nature of what design is. So design is not one line, but it's the set of the lines talking to each other and playing. And your job is to organize, and that's what you are doing. Design, by definition, is the organization of more than one thing. It's the so design implies the same thing as composition that way, that it's of multiplicity. It's unity out of multiples, which is where I get what I call music. That idea of things playing. So. Yeah, we were with Gammell. There might be a passage like this, even a piece of a scarf or a piece of a sleeve hanging down like this, and there would be this significant discussion about where that would come. We see this coming down here, but you don't want to bore me to death with some straight shot here. Just initially in itself, you want to give me a nice, interesting line in the foreground, shall we say, of the picture. On the other hand, you don't have to, but as long as you have to have, I mean, this is like, again, the movies, you make a movie, each individual unit should be interesting in itself, each individual scene. And then they should be beautifully hang together. The logic of the whole set of those things should be very apparent. And so there again, you can see how beautifully these play to each other just in terms of the angles. Never mind their sizes, et cetera, right? And never mind this one's being the most interesting, and these are getting less interesting as they go this way. So those are in the order of what plans, planning for things like that. The same thing actually applies to things that are what you want to call stripy, that they pick up stripinesses, and even fingers can be elements of the stripy game, even while they're individually being designed in a small area. You have to be aware of the play of similars, right? And that's, again, the class of design, even though it's bigger than just the individual group. So was there anything else on this one? I mean, with Ang, you're talking about something like this group here, and immediately you're talking about the size and placement of this one and this one here. And he's always aware of these things. That's why they look so good. Again, you can tell if a painter's been there because in those ways, because they look good together, right? You can tell if he's being relational. And again, that's the biggest thing you want to just fix in your mind, this idea of the relational. That's why you want to start and finish with it, because the music is in the relationships. And, not just of a pink and how big that is in relation to another pink, which might pick up other pinks throughout the picture, but which is very important, but in every little aspect. I like to think of that idea going with the idea of busyness, for example. This is a busy-ish area. Well, it's trying to be the center of interest, rather. And yet, this is a busy area too, but somehow or other its activity is made sort of less interesting than this. This is actually a place where you can rest and enjoy a few things. And then some other lesser busynesses, however you want to think of some of these areas. But that's just another continuation of the same thing. You see a group like this, and immediately you want to know what the other set is doing. So there's now 3 here. 2 are closer than the other. One is the biggest one is the second biggest, one's the third biggest. And the spacing is good looking. And the angle that they make it feels good to the angle of the other set of colors that seem to be of a kindred type. Okay. But yeah, so that's largely the game. I think that's probably all you need to hear. Oh yeah, I decided to give you a little close-up of this one. Thank you, somebody online, for doing this, so it made it easy for me. But this is a nice little piece of work in both these. You can see that these 2 lights feel good together, right? These are the feathers in the hat, and so they feel good to each other in the first place, and they do they do different things, but somewhat similar. Like this is a big sweep, but there's a hook up here, and this is a big sweep, but there's a bit of a more complex hook up here. So there's a certain like that they're doing. So they're playing together that way. But what you're going to see him doing is playing with these little things like this and this. So where are these going to land, and what are they going to land in relation to? So there's this, right just in this one little spot here, there's a timing issue between these, and between each of these units that are of a type. So this is just the beginning, but what you can do is you can transpose this kind of idea to everything in your entire picture. That's what the nature of design. In every aspect of design. So, so you can see a curve here, and if a guy's in town, if the guy didn't leave town while he was painting, this line will look good to this one, and you'll rather expect maybe to see a third piece playing to them. And if their timing is nice together, you'll say, oh, yeah, that's the group he was looking at. All right. So, yeah, so even in a feather, even in little pieces like that. The play of highlights in the hair, that's not just realism, that's actually designed. How big this is in relation to this one, where it is in relation to the other ones. That's all in the category of what we're talking about. This is a beautiful piece of design work of fingers, by the way. It's just really, really lovely. I mean, the tucked one, the one that's open more than the one that's open more, and the virtual straight one, that and the timing between them is so aesthetic, so beautiful. So, yeah, but it wouldn't matter where you went. You have a design problem. You have a design problem that may go all the way over, say, to here, or it may just be a local one. But whenever you have action, there's the element of design. So that's the underlying teaching that Gammell brought to us in an over-verbalized statement. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to have Gammell sit there and lay it out to you like that. He'd come in from time to time and show you something, maybe even adjust something and show you something to something, and then leave. So I don't know if you should consider yourself lucky or most unfortunate that I'm over-explaining to the point of killing the fun. So I think that's it, yeah. So good. So thank you, Mr. Anon, and please do let me know if that doesn't answer your question, if there's something actually that you perceive to be, well, that your question entailed that I completely missed, which is entirely possible. All right, good. All right, so see you next time, and please do subscribe, share, and comment, and donate if you can. We're catching up a little bit with my producer, covering his past expenses. So much appreciated to each of you. And do well this week. See you in the next video.